Less stressed but still anxious and a bit prickly from the day before, I took the afternoon off for some prep, building a new boat, making supplies and checking everything was in place for the next day's events. Just before bedtime, a drowned zombie shambled from the riverbed looking for a scrap, so I shot him in the face with my sword, and I was awarded for my merciless brutality because the soggy youth had an enchanted sword that looked very sharp. This'll do nicely. But it smells like a kraken's unwashed crotch, god damn it. I even got to test it out on these two biologically challenged stab magnets. Seriously though, this thing makes my hand smell like I just checked Moby Dick's prostate with my fist. Whew! I was up bright and early, so I rode to the village to steal another person to add to my collection of stolen people. I started to check the windows looking for occupants and kinda got an eyeful of the back end of some sort of kinky roleplay sesh. Thank God I didn't come earlier, who knows what I'd have walked in on. On the upside, maybe one of these might be up for what I had in mind, so I decided to be upfront and honest about my intentions. And it worked, because by the time it took to get round to the front of the house, this youth was already saddled up and ready to go. I admired their eagerness. The row home was a doddle until we went sort of downwind and got caught up in the smell of the sword. I tried passing it off as like, oh, it's an old fishing boat, but I don't think it worked. It was kind of getting worse in the sun, going from a fermented fish butt smell to a only adult toy in Atlantis that everyone has to share kind of vibe. It was brutal. I backed the boat into the holding pen over the breeder, and the new guy was more than willing to get into the hole, and both were well up for it, so I chucked them some bread for social lubrication, and they soon got to it. An offspring was produced and I left them to rest for a bit. I needed 10 villages, so I was definitely going to need more bread. Over at my wheat and seeds chest, where I keep my wheat and seeds for the times that I needed wheat and or seeds, because this was the time that I needed some wheat, not seeds, I got some wheat and I baked some bread. Back at the breeder. You know the problem that I may have had last episode that I wasn't sure about? It could have been a problem, I didn't know. Well, it turns out it was a problem. Villagers have this thing about beds where they attach themselves to beds and how the rules of amount of beds to breed and... and then not in beds and stuff. Minecraft. Just... Boring. Who cares? I needed more beds, so I nipped back to the village to steal as many as I could. Nothing of interest happened, but I did grab a grindstone, a block of smooth stone I thought was a block of iron, and a brewing stand for potions. I got about 8 beds from the village, so I took them to the iron farm and laid them under their housing, but I was still going to need 12 more. While I was breeding sheep for the wool I needed, I tended to my wheat a few times, sorted out my taters and got through a large amount of wood, like your gran. I refilled the stick furnace, and while I had time, I went and upgraded the spawner collection system. This is a grindstone. A grindstone repairs stuff and disenchants items. Simple. Right. You see the purpley shimmery stuff in the chest? That glow means that item is enchanted. If you don't need an enchanted item, then you just pop it in here to remove its magic, which converts it into experience points for you. Or XP, as the cool kids say. We'll get to what experience does when that comes up, you know. Anyway, it's not going to give you loads of XP, but you do have a tendency to rack up multiple enchanted items over a long period of time that are just not useful. So it's best to just recycle them. Which leads me nicely into the next upgrade. Oh, blast furnace. Blast furnaces are literally just a furnace that can smelt things faster, but with the upside of having a recycle mode. You see the gold stuff in this collection chest? You can pop gold or even iron items into the blast furnace to reduce them into nuggets of their base material. Don't expect crazy returns, but again, and especially early game, this can make a difference here and there, and it's good practice in general. Now, skeleton bows are a great fuel in some respects, so I recycle them too by using them to fuel the blast furnace. In short, skeleton spawners are amazing. Simple mechanics, simple to build while requiring hardly any resources. So there you go. Back to Iron Farm. Time skip. Back at the spawner housing, I had 10 beautiful offspring that all came pre-packaged in outfits from Benetton, looking smooth, lads. Look, I don't really know how YouTube works, but just in case Benetton is not a sponsor, other clothing labels exist and they all work together in unity to stop the spread of unnecessary nudity. So yeah, buy clothes. While waiting for the babies to hit puberty, it was time to install the collection system for the iron farm. I knew I was digging east, so I dropped through the centre of the floor and dug a tunnel before the hyenas came, which is a reference about 3 of you's going to get, but I hope it makes you happy. I dropped through into the collection chamber of my functional underground cave kingdom, but I did not stay long. It was a confined space with little ventilation, and this sword was stinking out the place with the smell I could only describe as Godzilla's taint sweat mixed with Poseidon's feet. For the iron farm to work, the villagers had to have a job, so I enrolled them into an online fletching course and went about crafting them a workbench to practice their trade. I needed more flint to complete my task. Flint comes from gravel, so I made a few gravel towers until I harvested everything I needed. I made 10 fletching workstations for my new posse and installed them at the iron farm ASAP. With everyone happy, I went to the breeder to tie up a couple of loose ends. No witnesses. This sword stinks so bad, man. Back downstairs, I was removing the temporary walkway from around the housing and I saw my first cat. Yes, cats meant the farm was working and it wouldn't be long before a golem appeared. I felt clever. When one did appear, I wanted a selfie with the brute, but even a mindless magical automaton has a sense of smell, so it refused to get any closer to me. And I don't blame it, because each of my fingers and my sword hand smelt like rotten shrimp and squid pee. This was the best shot I could get. I removed all evidence that anything war crimey from above ground and tried to distract myself from the inevitable. My iron farm and skeleton spawner needed one more ingredient, magma, and I had to go to the Nether for it. And I didn't want to go to the Nether for it. Oh. Tip time! This trick is straight out the speedrunner's handbook. Instead of stressing about trying to find obsidian to make a portal, all you really need is 1 bucket of water and to be close to somewhere that you can obtain at least 10 buckets of lava from. I made this structure to give you an idea of dimensions, etc., but it could just as easily be a wall. You get me? Place your water source on this block, which will cause the water to flow. As water gets everywhere, and depending on where you are, you may have to place a few blocks down to stem the flow of it at ground level. All I'm saying is you don't want the water to flow into your lava source, etc. So just be aware. Dig out 2 blocks in the ground, 1 under the water source, and then 1 to the right of it. Pop lava into each of those spaces and the water will turn it into obsidian. Next block over to the right, above ground, place 4 buckets of lava, 1 on top of each other, then do the same on the other side. This will give you your outer structure for the portal. Now be very careful here. For the last 2 blocks, do the right block first and then the left block, which will disperse the water. Light the portal with a flint and steel, and now you have a portal to the Nether. Yay! If you've not done it before, have a practice in creative mode a few times. But that's it. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. At my base, I knocked up a quick structure to make a portal and protect my sugarcane. Using the lava pool near my base, I extracted the lava I needed to make a portal and continued with little fuss. I made some flint and steel to light the portal, then I swapped my iron chestplate for a gold one. For some reason, even though I'm essentially going to visit hell, its denizens have a strict dress code for outsiders, and 1 gold item of clothing keeps you mostly safe from getting attacked from piglins. But that courtesy only really extends to piglins because everything else will try and rip your bloody head off regardless. I also crafted a new sword. The Nether smells like eggy farts as it is, but I didn't want to risk taking the old enchanted one just in case the smell of octopus smeg was somehow a kinky scent to the dimension's inhabitants. I jumped into the Nether, laid down a chest and put the flint and steel inside it just in case the portal shuts down and I needed to get home. Then I realised I forgot something and I had to go back to fetch it. Die right is not die wrong. Fight me. Back in the Nether, I had to choose left and up or right and down. I picked the right path as trying to hit the Nether floor was probably the best way to find magma. Laying down a diorite marker to lead me home, I finally found a way out of the tunnels. There are 5 biomes or environments in the Nether, and this was a soul sand valley, which was a good thing and a bad thing. It was good because it was mostly inhabited by skeletons, which pose little threat to me because I'm me. And bad because soul sand was the biome's primary choice of block, which makes players walk slower than an elderly man on horse trank. Running away when poop hit the fan would be sketchy, and there was a gas patrolling about too. Not good. I grabbed some soul sand for the future, more on that another time, And from here I was looking for a route down. To the right there was nothing, and to the left there was not much more, but then I happened to just look up and I caught this out the corner of my eye. Jackpot. I thought about taking a route back through the tunnels to go to the portal and trying the tunnel that I didn't use that was left and up, but instead I decided to go back and climb to the magma, which was a gamble and far more badass. I started my ascent but stopped when I heard a skeleton close by. One good arrow shot and I might end up on the floor below if the fall itself didn't actually kill me, and both prospects sucked, but I persisted. I could see what looked like a ruined portal, which made me happy because it confirmed the presence of multiple magma blocks. I only needed two, and if I got all the way up there and there were just one, I'd have been so miffed. I located the skeleton, or more accurately, they located me, and while under fire I covered its line of sight with diorite, which I also used to stand on to get my prize. I mined out the 2 blocks I needed, and I didn't want to take any risks checking the ruin for loot, so I turned back, dodging the attentions of another skeleton that was above me as I returned to the tunnels. I thought I was safe until an arrow upside my head proved me wrong, but all it took was one brutal off-camera murder later and I was back at the portal on my way home to finish my projects. Back in the overworld, I took the magma to the spawner and swapped out the chopping block for magma. Magma. This kills the skeletons automatically, so I don't have to. The difference being that I get no XP or special loot with this method, but there was also nothing stopping me from going manual either. Yup, I can choose whether to cook or stab my victims now. I am evil personified! I crafted loads of hoppers and a minecart hopper, which almost left me with no iron, so it seemed fitting that within just a few hours obtaining iron would no longer be a problem for me. At the iron farm I dropped into the space for the collection method, which was the same as the spawner. The hopper minecart will collect the drops and the hopper will carry it and transport the items into storage chests. You get what I mean. I wedged a block of magma into the floor above the collection cart, and all I needed to do now was just set up the water and the project was over. I had already lined 2 outer walls with glass that the water would be placed on, so I knocked up a temporary infinite water supply in a wall to cut down faffing about. I placed water on top of each glass block on one side. Now you know you've done right if the water stops just short of the magma, so with both sides watered up you should be left with a little 1 block gap of dry blocks. At each end of the dry gap place a block against the wall and place water on top of it. The water will connect and flow to the other bits of water. And now, the only block not underwater should be the magma. The water will push the golem into the magma and cook them to death. And the cats will also die too. sorry. Something in my throat, sorry. And that's pretty much that. As long as I'm within a certain distance of the iron farm, it'll do its thing automatically. So, yeah, that's it. Just a few more things to do and I'll let you get off. Using glass, I threw down a roof to the iron farm, which was now a floor. It was a floor and a roof that I could see through. But I like seeing through it because I like making sure everything's working good. I knocked the partition from the spawner down and laid down more glass on the ceiling of the spawner, which was now the floor of this room, and that was both projects finished. I'm a legend. My final task of the day was getting rid of this bloody smelly sword. I just can't hack it anymore. It smelt like decomposing oysters and mackerel guts that had a dash of flipper and a sprig of Free Willy in it, and then all that were cooked inside a Seos's pouch that Aquaman had recently fertilised in. Sorry, visuals, man. I dug an hole in the ground, threw the sword into it, grabbed a bucket of molten rock and destroyed the sword with lava. That was disgusting, man. I could still smell the sword on my hands, so I went for a bath in the river. I swear I can still smell it.